All right, so just to recap what we've covered already, also for those that weren't here Wednesday, we started looking at Numbers 25 after already having looked at Balaam and his efforts to curse Israel, 4 attempts that were unsuccessful. But we find at the beginning of chapter 25 that Israel began to be involved with the women of Moab and Midian through physical harlotry and adultery and fornication. I'm sure all of those mixed together. But obviously, also, we talked about that leading to spiritual harlotry in the form of idolatry. And so this was then why not only a judgment was pronounced against Israel to kill those men that were guilty of this sin with the sword, but also a plague was sent among the people. We'll mention that again here in a moment. But initially, we talked about, in question number 2 there, 3 through 9, the Lord's response to Israel's unfaithfulness, and that was because, or his response, rather, was his anger was kindled. Maybe your translation says, against the people of Israel. And then we have this very bold-faced wickedness happen in verse 6, where we have a Midianite woman that goes into the tent of a leader of Simeon, who we'll mention again here in a moment, and that's where we left off. So coming to question 3 here, continue on, 6 through 13. What did Phinehas do to stop the plague that comes amongst the people? And then a little further down in the text, why is his action described as turning back God's wrath? So what does Phinehas initially do to stop this plague? Yeah. And who is Phinehas, by the way? I think we've maybe mentioned this a time or two, but who is he? Yeah, and so he would be the grandson of Aaron, right? So he's in that lineage of priests. That's right, yeah, son of Eleazar. It almost reads like in verse 7, when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand. It's almost, earlier in the text, the people have begun to mourn Moses along with them. I'm assuming Eleazar, Phinehas himself, but it's almost like he looks up, he sees these two going to commit what he knows is going to be done, and there's no hesitation, right? He takes his spear and he goes to these individuals and he pierces them through in a rather graphic way. It says through the belly. He pierces them through, kills them, and this is what stops the plague. And how many had died at this point? So the plague is stopped, but many had died. How many had died? 24,000. So quite a few in God's judgment had died up to this point. But we get a further explanation. So this does stop the plague, but this gets into the second question. Why is his action described as turning back God's wrath? What sort of spirit did he have? Yes, sir.
Phinehas has the zealous spirit for God that God is looking for. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily just go out and kill for the sake of killing. But the point here is that Phinehas has a heart. Mm-hmm. The heart of God.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, as far as I know, I think Phinehas is the only one in the Old Testament. I think Paul is described in a similar way in the New Testament. But in the Old Testament, he's the only character described as having this sort of zeal, as having the zeal of the Lord. In verse 11, he was jealous with my jealousy, or zealous with my zeal is maybe another way to translate that. But both of those words interchangeable, meaning the same thing. And it is interesting, I think we've talked about this word also in other contexts. Jealousy, zeal, how does that fit into the picture? And maybe even why does that particular concept and word fit into the particular sin that we've just seen with Israel against God. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm framing that okay.
It's in the context of a loving relationship.
Yeah.
It's a betrayal. It's being angered that what was rightfully the Lord's has been misdirected to shame His name.
Yeah.
And so, yes, sir, I think that's a logical. There's this whole idea of spiritual adultery.
Yeah.
And the Lord saw in Phinehas somebody that understood. This is unacceptable. And his zeal, gave the Lord a sense that there are people willing to stand up for me.
Absolutely. And this is the sort of spirit that he wanted in all of his people, I'm sure, and the sort of spirit that all of Israel needed as they entered into the land. But yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that this word goes along with the sin we've just seen. Yes, sir.
And it goes even further, verse 11, God extends His covenant of peace.
Absolutely.
To Phinehas and all of his descendants.
That's right. So that kind of goes along with, again, what we've seen with, so those that sin, their family may have consequences because of that sin, but if one acts faithfully and has the zeal of the Lord, then their descendants will reap the benefits of that. So there's that contrast again. That's a good point. Appreciate that. Anything else there with Phinehas and his act against the transgressors? You got something?
I think you were touching upon it.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's going too far to think that bringing this forward, being his descendants, are those that are through his bloodline, or is it through those that have the zeal that he's talking about?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. You'd hope. Yeah.
The everlasting priesthood is
Yeah.
what we have
Yeah.
when we are zealous, if we want to use that word
Yeah.
right now.
Great point. Yeah, that's maybe it's again that sort of double fulfillment in terms of a promise that's given, as we've seen with some of these other promises. And I think that's well made, a point well made. We certainly need to have that same zeal, being a kingdom of priests today.
That's how we have peace.
Yeah.
That's what we yearn for.
That's right. Yeah, and it may be a difficult decision, and it may be a decision that no one else is willing to make. Phinehas is the only one that, in this instance, goes and acts on that. Maybe someone else would have. We're not given that in the text, but Phinehas is blessed because of it. All right, moving into question 4 then. So continuing to talk about the context with the Midianites. Why does God command Israel to treat the Midianites as enemies and to strike them? What do you have for that?
Reduce them to sin,
Yes. So they have. What's there's a particular phrase used here, I believe. Where's that at? Yeah, maybe your translation says verse 17. What does yours say there? Harass. What was another one? Vex, harass. So you show hostility is maybe another translation towards the Midianites, because they've shown hostility towards you. Strike them down. For verse 18, they have harassed you with their. What do you have for that? What word? Their wiles. What's another one?
Schemes.
What's the
Schemes.
schemes? Yes, schemes. There's trickery is another one that I like. So the idea of cunning, craftiness. I liked one that said knavery. That's not really a word we use much anymore, but it's the idea of doing something with a certain goal in mind, but accomplishing it through deceit, through deceitful scheming. That's another good word. And so the Lord is not going to stand for such actions. this is more of the work of Satan, the great deceiver, and God's not going to stand for it. And so this whole story is full of deceit, as we're going to continue to, or it's going to continue to be unveiled who has been deceiving, some of the players at work here. And God is beginning to carry out some of his vengeance against those who have been antagonistic towards his people. So that's what we see here. Anything else there in question 4 with the Midianites? All right, well, just moving straight into question 5 then. So what is the end result? God has told them, you show hostility towards those who have shown you hostility. What is the end result of Israel's campaign against the Midianites? And you go over to chapter 31, and this is where we see the end of their conflict with the Midianites here. But what happens?
Moses recruits, we call it a division of soldiers, or 1,000 of each tribe.
Yes, right. Yeah, so of course adding up to 12,000. And by the way, who goes with them? Who's sort of spearheading the?
That was a giveaway.
Yeah. Phinehas. Yeah. I like to think he's got the same spear he's used against the ones that had shown wickedness in the camp. And so he's going with them. And by the way, I think that would give a vote of confidence to the ones that are going off to war. I would like to have Phinehas by my side, the one who has the same sort of zeal that the Lord has. Love Phinehas. And well, before we keep going, notice in verse 2, the Lord, speaking to Moses here, says, "Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterward, you shall be gathered to your people." And this is where I want to bring in this point. So back in chapter 25, the Lord says, those who have shown hostility towards you, you show hostility towards them. Well, that's not really loving your neighbor as yourself, is it? That thought might occur to us. But there's another passage that says, vengeance is whose? Vengeance is mine, I will repay. And this is the way that he is showing vengeance. He's carrying out his vengeance. Deuteronomy 32:35, Paul quotes this later in Romans chapter 12. Vengeance belongs to the Lord, and this is how he is fulfilling it. So I think that's a point worth making here. But coming back to the men, so we've got 12,000 men, Phinehas going with them. What else goes with them into battle? What does the text say? They carry certain objects with them.
Trumpets.
Yep, the silver trumpets, and we've talked about those. So these were the trumpets instructed to Moses to make these trumpets for various reasons, but in this particular case, to sound the alarm for war, to rally all these men together. It also mentions the holy vessels are going into battle with them, which is something that occurs throughout their military campaigns as they go into the land. And so what is the end result of everything that happens? They take all these men with them, they take these objects. What happens?
Kill all the Midianite men.
Yeah,
Take the women and children captive.
that's right. So they kill every male. In terms of leadership, who do they kill?
All the kings.
All the kings. And notice one of the kings that's killed, Zer, who is the father of Cosbi, the woman who had gone into this leader from Simeon, whom Phinehas had killed. So he is killed there in the number. Who also is killed? Balaam is killed. So we see the end of Balaam, and we might be wondering at this point in the story, why is Balaam killed? We're not given all those details yet, but we'll get to that here in a moment.
Is that the same Balaam that Balak asked to curse Israel?
Same guy. So it might seem to us just reading through the text at first, well, this is a prophet of God. He's only speaking where the Lord has spoken and so forth. We've made some hints along the way that he's maybe not all he's saying he is, and that's certainly going to be the case as we read further. So all these individuals are killed, all these groups, and it was also mentioned the women and the children, livestock and the spoil are captured. They do go on to burn the cities, to burn the encampments of the Midianites, and they bring all that they have to Moses, to Eleazar, at their own encampment on the Plains of Moab, where we've been for some time in the text. Just moving straight into question 31, these two really do go together. In 13 through 16 here of 31, why is Moses angry at the Israelite commanders? They've gone out, they've conquered, they've seemingly won a great victory. Why is Moses angry with them? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. They spared the very women who were the ones who caused the sons of Israel to trespass against the Lord, and that caused this plague and all these other punishments to happen amongst the camp. And so it's almost like, you can sort of see Moses' frustration at, I thought we were finally getting it. Not quite. So then what does Moses order the men to do from there? So they've captured these women. What do they do from there? Yeah, kill every woman who has known a man. He also orders the men to kill every male of the children, as it would seem. So this nation will not continue as it has. But he does say to spare the young girls who had not known a man. That is given in the text. But the point is, they do not get to decide who lives, who dies. Again, whose is vengeance? Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. He sets the terms. Doesn't matter how smart we think we are. God is the one who sets those things. Another important point there. Anything else there on 5 or 6? Question 5 or 6, both going together. All right, let's go into question 7 then. We may camp out here for a moment. So Numbers 31 and verse 16 reveals to us that Balaam, the same Balaam we've been talking about, was instrumental in leading the Israelites to sin with the Midianite women. And I've given you some references here. How does the New Testament talk about Balaam, and what lessons should we learn?
Beware the influence of false teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the devil never stops fishing for us.
Yeah. Yes, Balaam is synonymous with false teachers, false teaching. And in particular, we're given some more details, and I think we could sort of piece these things together as we go through the text we've seen in Numbers already. But what was Balaam's motivation the entire time? The New Testament bears this out in what he did.
He wanted to profit from it.
That's right. Yeah. So 2 Peter 2 and verse 15, for instance, says that he loved the wages of unrighteousness, so motivated by greed and profit, and making a profit off of putting sin before others or causing others to sin. Jude verse 11, he did it for the pay or the wages, and Balaam is grouped there together with Cain and Korah, I believe, so others in Israel's history who have been synonymous with rebellion. And Jude is talking about those that have followed after Balaam's error, that is, those that have done things for pay or wages and greed and so forth. And then finally, Revelation 2, and in verse 14, talking about the doctrine of Balaam. Balaam taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual immorality. So this is sort of the idea of tolerating compromise. And tolerating compromise, tolerating sin, can corrupt an entire camp. When Balaam just says, well, just, it won't be so bad if you go into these women. Just introduce the idea, introduce the concept to them, and then they took it and ran with it. And this is what caused the plague. I know we talked about this last time, but Balaam, in the end, after having said so many times, I cannot speak beyond the word of the Lord, though you give me all your silver and your gold, I couldn't speak beyond the word of the Lord, he found a way to, if you will, in his own mind, to find a loophole in God's commandments. First God said, don't go. Then God said, my people shall not be cursed because I have found no iniquity in them. Balaam found a way to put sin in the camp, to introduce sin into the camp, and then he could gain the riches from that. And for a time, I suppose, he received those riches. He got what he wanted, but he sowed the wind and he reaped the whirlwind, as it were. In similar ways, I don't think that we've stopped having Balaams today. Those that love preeminence, those that love position and status and wealth even, to even go so far as to entice people to turn aside from the truth and cause God in that way to see iniquity in others. I think the Waldrons make a similar sort of point in their material. Let's see here if we've got anything else. I think I did just want to note one thing in the text here that maybe I failed to mention. Verse 16 and verse 31 that I've already referred to. Behold, these on Balaam's advice caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord. Anyone have a different phrase for that? To act treacherously. It's translated differently in other places, in certain places we've already looked. So for instance, this is the same word back in Numbers chapter 5. To act treacherously, to break faith, to be unfaithful. It's the same word. So we have this idea again of spiritual adultery against the Lord, to act treacherously against the Lord. And so they again experience the curse because of that. Anything else here on question 7 with Balaam, how the New Testament talks about Balaam? All right, question 8 then. So we're still here in Numbers 31, continuing. What purification procedures are required for the soldiers and the plunder after the battle? So the battle we've been talking about with the Midianites. And then I've asked you to also consider what this teaches us about holiness. So let's just first start with what we have in the text. What procedures do they have to go through, the soldiers?
First off, they have to remain outside the camp for 7 days.
That's right.
Purify themselves.
Mm-hmm. And purify on which of those days? I think the text also gives us that. So 7 days outside of the camp and purify themselves on which days? 3rd and 7th day. Very good. And what do these purification procedures include? What were they to purify, as it were? What did this include?
Garments made of leather.
Yeah, garments, frankly, various articles of clothing, but leather and other pieces of clothing. What else?
Anything made of wood.
Anything made of wood? And what else? It's rather inclusive here, isn't it? If you go down a little further in the text.
The gold, the silver, brass, iron.
Yeah. Right. And then anything that the text says, anything that couldn't pass through the fire, So you would pass some of these metals through the fire, but anything that couldn't was to be purified how? Through water, passed through water. All right? So then, looking at the question, the second question here, two-parter, what do you suppose this teaches us about holiness, but what was it to teach the soldiers and the people about holiness? These aren't necessarily new lessons, but just to reiterate some points here. What do you have?
Be free from defilement.
Yeah, this idea of separation again, free from defilement. I like that, how that's put. So they had to be cleansed. Notice again in the beginning of the process, they're outside the camp 7 days. This is when the purification is happening. That's where they do the purification process. And it's not until they complete those processes that they can then re-enter the camp. Those must take place first before they enter back into the congregation who is holy, before they enter back into the camp where God dwells with the tabernacle and with the mercy seat. I think all of those things go together. Anything or anyone have anything else here? Yes, sir.
Do you suppose that this is where the old adage that cleanliness is next to godliness comes from?
Yeah. I don't know if that's how most people would use it, but they, yeah, I think it's true. Yeah, I would think so.
I've said that all my life.
Yeah.
Then we see this dramatically presented in the scripture.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and to your point, God is the one that provides the purification, isn't He? They don't come up with this, oh, well, we'll do the wood and we'll do this piece of clothing, and it's not random or arbitrary. God has set those processes. Yes, sir?
Yes, it's seeing that He's made an absolute way of purification, absolute condemnation.
Yeah, right.
I don't think they would have just randomly come up with all these things.
Yeah.
This was God's instruction.
Yeah, they would have just taken it, right? It would not occur to them, or I'll say this, it would not occur to me, if I can say that, to put all these through fire and water and so forth. But God this is a teaching moment for these soldiers and for the rest of the people. Think about this also. All of their soldiers, all of the ones that have participated in the battle, are now away from the camp. They're, at least from a physical viewpoint, vulnerable in many ways. But if they have just seen the results of the battle, they've been victorious because of God. God is the one who gave them the victory. So they trust in God that He is going to continue to protect them, even if it's for 7 days that the soldiers aren't there with them in the camp. So maybe that's another point we can make. See another hand? Yes, sir.
Again, this purification will make possible their obedience.
That's right.
To follow.
Yeah.
It's conditional.
Yeah, so they would only continue to remain holy as they practiced holiness. Yeah, I think that's true. Yes, sir.
And it's interesting to note that this forgiveness is connected back in 19 with sacrifice, blood, and water,
Yes.
which is not uncommon in the Old Testament as a
That's right.
precursor.
Yeah. So another shadow, if you will, pointing to the new covenant, this purification that's happening. Great point. Also, just try to put yourself in the shoes of these soldiers, of these warriors. You've rallied together. You've gone with Phinehas, this great champion of God's people. You've gone forward. You've done. First, you didn't fully carry out the Lord's will, but then from there, you carried out the Lord's will in killing these women and so forth that needed to have been taken out in the first place. And now you've been told, well, now you can't be with the people for these 7 days. You have to go through this process. Could it not be a temptation to say, I have only done what was asked of me, and now why am I having to go outside the camp and do more of these things? Why do I have to do those things? They had done the will of the Lord. They had continued to make adjustments and correct, do all those things. But if that's the mentality, they had only done what was their duty to do. To use the language of Christ in one of his parables, we are but unprofitable servants. We have only done what is our duty to do. I do think, though, that these ceremonies, as has been pointed out, so clearly symbolize spiritual cleansing. They weren't just to view this purification or these purification processes as, well, we gotta check the boxes so then we can go back into the camp. This was a period of reflection, of God bringing the victory, of God again being the one who provides this purification. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 7, for instance, to bring up one sort of fulfillment of what we're talking about, that Christ's blood cleanses us from all sin. That is the process for us today, the purification process, if you will. Anything else here on question 8 before we move forward? All right, question 9 then. So we've talked about some of the plunder that has been taken already. How is it divided between the warriors, the congregation, and the Lord? Let's start with that question. How is it divided up? I know this math was never my strongest subject, so this is one that I have to kind of wrap my head around and maybe read through the text a couple of times. But how is it divided up in the end? Yes, sir.
Kind of an easy math problem. Just divide by 2.
Throw me into the bus. All right. Yeah, divide. Okay. So how is it divided up then? If you go a little further. So one for
Half of it goes to the men who actually took part in the battle.
Yeah.
If you call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half goes to the rest of the congregation.
All right. So that's the beginning of the equation. So then from there, who else gets a portion? So we've got the warriors, we've got the congregation. Who else gets a piece of the plunder? The Levites, and ultimately, as it's given to the Levites, how does the Lord view that? It's his, right? Because the Levites are his inheritance. They are his people. They belong, or they are his special, all of Israel's special people. You know what I'm saying. They're the special tribe set apart for special service. And so with the soldiers' part, as it was divided up, what is the portion given to the Lord?
One out of every 500.
1 out of every 500, that's right. And that tribute is specifically given to Eleazar, the high priest, for service in certain ways. And then, as was already mentioned, some were given to the Levites, and that was how many in that case? Not 500, but 50. 1 out of every 50. And so those were given for service in the tabernacle in various ways. And so we continue to see that play out in some of the things from the people given for service in that work. All right, let's see. When we get the detailed numbers of all that the soldiers and the congregation were able to take, because there are a lot of numbers given here in the text of all these animals and so forth that are taken for plunder. These would, so talking about service of the tabernacle, what do you suppose many of these went to the service of? If we're talking about animals, if they're clean especially, for sacrifices. So maybe, one's for sacrifice, some for hauling supplies and so forth. All of this God is giving them provision for. And he is still blessing his people. He's not, in the grand scheme of things, he's really not taking that much from the people or the warriors. But he is saying, I have a portion in this because I am the one who has given you the blessing of this victory and the blessing of the spoil that's been taken. All right? Well, we have another blessing, as it happens, from the battle. So this gets to the second part of the question. The men of war who have gone to battle notice what incredible thing had taken place at the conclusion of the battle. Yeah, had not lost a single soldier in the entire conflict. And of course, this would be a great blessing, would it not? It shows the power of God, and it shows that God is indeed the one who brought them the victory. And so then from there, what do the men offer up to God on account of them? No, this isn't necessarily part of the question, but after they realize that, what do they give up? Yeah, so some of their some of their precious possessions that they've acquired, and it says that it be on account of their atonement. So we see that concept brought in again. It seems that they feel a sense of unworthiness in having gone to battle for the Lord, even not fully carrying out the Lord's will in the start, and then carrying that out the rest of the way, and yet still they had not lost a man. And so they do feel a responsibility, if you will, to offer more to the Lord, and I think that's commendable of them. Anything else there here in question 9 in lesson 17? All right, well, we've got just a few minutes left here. Looking at lesson 18. So these are, as the material puts it, just other events on the Plains of Moab, things that take place shortly hereafter. Looking at question number 1, this may be the only one we deal with this morning. But you remember the first census that was taken back in Numbers chapter 1, and the reasons given there for this census were military organization, camp arrangement as they camped around the tabernacle, and then setting up and taking up camp as they move along. That's back in Numbers 1 and Numbers chapter 2. Here in Numbers 26, we have a second census that's given. How many are counted in this second census, and why was the census done at this time? So start with the number. How many are counted?
1,730.
Very good. So a little bit less than the previous census, and we've seen many have died between then and where we are now. So that's, I'm sure, some of the reason for that. But why do you suppose, and the text bears this out, why was the census done at this time? What was the reasoning for it?
They're getting ready to cross over, plus even before they cross over, there's going to be a land issue.
That's right. Yeah.
It looks like it's talking about how much land each tribe's going to.
Right. So it talks about if you're in a larger tribe, larger allotment, lesser allotment, all of those sorts of things. And also given by lot, which maybe we'll talk about at a later time. But all of this, again, not just give a census and let's just see where we are at this point. It is for a reason. And by the way, does the Lord know how many are in? Yeah, He knows how many are in the army at this point. This is for the benefit of the people, seeing where they are, and so it is for land inheritance and distribution. What else? There's some repeats from earlier. These are again, or what category of people are counted again? It's not all of the people, but the soldiers, right? So this is again for military organization. As they are about to actually go in, and they've had some battles. We've just talked about one. But as they actually go into the land of Canaan and then start distributing the land, it's for that benefit as well. What else? What's maybe one more reason that this census is given? Are there a lot of names in this chapter? A lot of names of families and clans and tribes. What benefit do you suppose would that have on future generations?
Historical evidence, I guess.
Yeah. Historical evidence of, the look at where our family has come from. This is where we are now. And we are here because of our spiritual heritage. God promised all those years ago to Abraham that he would be a great nation and that his people would have a land of promise. We're living in it now, and we're here because of the faithfulness of our fathers, of our grandfathers, so on and so forth. And they could go back here and to other places as well. And I think that's a great build of confidence. Yes, sir.
Well, at the end of this chapter, I guess, makes a point that there is not a single man who was counted in the first census.
Mm-hmm.
There are two
That's right.
left. Caleb, of course, and Joshua,
Yep.
but not a single man who was above the age of 20
Mm-hmm.
when they left Egypt is alive now.
Yeah.
And that's what God told them was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this drives home the point. The children of Israel, that when God speaks, his will be carried out.
That's right. So that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? So we see perhaps this second generation who would have children, they look back at their grandparents, the ones that died in the wilderness, as compared to Joshua and Caleb and their families, and there's that contrast made, as it's recorded here in the book of the books of the Law of Moses. And so that would be a great lesson as well, to look at their faithfulness. Anything else there on question 1 of 18? All right, well, we'll plan to pick up question 2, lesson 18, on Wednesday. Lessons 20 and 21 are in the back. Those are new, so you can pick those up and start prepping for when we get there. Thank you.